All right, welcome everyone to this episode of Perpetual Perspectives, powered by Vest Exchange, where we believe traders deserve markets built to protect them. So Vest is here because exchanges today often leave traders exposed to manipulation, unfair liquidations, and unpredictable liquidity. At Vest, we're fixing that by replacing opaque market makers with a decentralized risk engine, which transparently prices liquidity in real time. As I mentioned in the last episode, we recently launched our points program where you can earn rewards for trying out Vest. Check it out today at vest.exchange. So today I have the honor and pleasure of having with me Zeneca, as you might know him on Twitter. He's been in the game since 2017, an ex-professional poker player turned crypto investor, founder of Zen Academy, and the writer of a Substack newsletter by the name of Letters from a Zeneca with over, I believe, 37,000 subscribers. So without further delay, let's get right into it. Thanks for taking the time out, Zeneca. How's it going? And also, is there anything that I missed that you would like to fill in the gaps for in terms of the brief introduction?
No, that was really comprehensive. Thanks so much for that. It's going well, and thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to be here and to chat.
Awesome. Let's get right into it, man. So usually I've been asking this question for everyone that's been coming on. Was there a story behind your account name on Twitter? Was it like a thoughtful process in terms of how you came up with your the name of your account?
It was a little bit thoughtful, not a lot, only a few minutes, but it was. I created my account in March 2021, and I sort of looked around on crypto Twitter, and it seemed like everyone had like a pseudonym or screen name or whatever, and so
Yep.
I was like, I should probably come up with something. I don't want to use like my full name. And I looked around my desk, and there was I'm very appropriately for this podcast a big fan of Stoicism, and so there was a book
Yep.
by Seneca, and
Yep.
that just like stood out to me. I was like, huh, maybe something I can do with that. And then I didn't want to just copy it and be like just straight up Seneca. And
Right.
then I don't know, somewhere in my brain I just pulled up Zeneca because Zen Buddhism. It was also around the time of COVID, like AstraZeneca vaccine was going around. So like, oh, maybe that was something in my head. But
Yep.
when I came up with it, like Zeneca, that sounds kind of cool. So let's go with that. And originally it was Zeneca 33 because I was 33 years old and Zeneca wasn't available, but eventually was able to get at Zeneca.
Yeah, no, that's a clean name, man. That's a clean name. I'm jealous. All right, so let's take it back to the beginning. So you talk about going from high school to being a poker player for 15 years. So let's start there and let's talk about how you got into poker and what that journey was like. How did you get into that?
Yeah, I've always loved games, since as long as I can remember. The first earliest memories, I was playing card games, playing chess, playing board games, video games. So just always been a fan of that. And then when I was 17, I think, I was actually at a friend's house. We were playing Halo, a game night. There were 8 of us there. We took a break, turned the TV on, and poker was on. ESPN was showing the World Series of Poker, and 7 of us had no idea what it was. And one of my friends had seen it before. He knew the games, how Texas Hold'em worked, and so he explained the rules to us. And we all were like, "Hey, that's really cool. Sounds interesting." And so we ended up starting to play a little bit amongst ourselves over the next sort of few weeks and months. And everyone was kind of taking it casually, but I have this super addictive, obsessive personality, and when I find something that I like, I just go sort of all in. And so like over that few month period and beyond, I basically went online, found all the poker forums I could, bought like 10 or 15 poker books. I would even like print out A4 pages from websites and just like read and consume as much information as I could. And yeah, from there, it was just sort of improving, getting better, being able to make a living out of it. I went to university, but dropped out after 6 months because I was already playing poker. And it's obviously a lot more fun to play poker than sit in a university lecture. And yeah, basically the entire 15 years, I mean, I could spend hours just talking about that. It was an entire roller coaster, many ups and downs and all sorts of things there. But that's how I got into it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I've seen there's a lot of people in the space that are ex poker players or current play poker professionally currently, and it's just the way you think it's in terms of probability. So we'll revisit that in terms of some of the things that you brought over when you came into crypto in this market and some of the lessons that you learned playing poker that you now apply to the market. Um, but I believe your initial exposure was back in 2017. And I'm just curious to know how you got exposed to crypto and how you got started.
Yeah, I mean, technically, my first exposure was like in 2011, believe it or not, because going back to
Oh
poker,
wow. Okay.
the U.S. government passed some legislation that effectively made it impossible for people to play online poker in America. And so you had a lot of professionals who some went to Vegas, some went to Canada, some went to Mexico. But some smart entrepreneurial person was like, hey, there's this digital currency, this Bitcoin thing. Maybe we can create a online site in that. And they did. It was called Seals with Clubs, I think. Seals with Clubs or Seals with Clubs. And it was a pretty prominent poker site back in the day. So I did play a little bit on there, but it was always immediately transferred back into US dollars. And I didn't really think too much more about Bitcoin at the time. Like you said, it wasn't until 2017 that I sort of quote unquote properly got into the space. And it was because I had a friend, a poker friend, Jamie, who he just messaged me. He's like, hey, have you heard of this Ethereum thing? And I said, no, what is it? And he sort of explained it to me as like, Bitcoin has been around for a while. This is sort of an evolution on top of that. And obviously, at that point, everyone wished they could go back in time and buy Bitcoin, many, many years
Right.
earlier. So this was an opportunity to get in slightly earlier. So that's when I first sort of jumped in, and then it wasn't crazy early. I think ETH was around 80 to 150 US dollars. So early, but nothing obscene, like less than $1. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, the cycle was just trading altcoins. I didn't really know what I was doing. I round tripped a lot. Most of my trading was on centralized exchanges, but that's when I got the bug.
Interesting. Where were you getting your information from at the time? Was it just like blogs and stuff?
I think it was Reddit. It was Reddit
Okay.
and YouTube, if I remember correctly, and just like other friends. Like I was still playing poker, and most of my poker career was online, but I spent a few years playing in real life, so over a physical table. And that during that first 2017 era, I was playing in person, and so for many many months, maybe 9 months, all people were talking about at the table was crypto. So yeah, that plus Reddit plus YouTube, not Twitter at all for whatever reason.
So from what I understand, I think you came back during like right after COVID or around that time period. Um, what
Yeah.
what pressed you to come back into the market, and what piqued your interest during that period of time? And how did that look different than when you were first, back in 2011 or 2017? Like, did things change when you started paying more attention?
Yeah. So I did basically leave the space during that 2018 to 2020 bear market, but I didn't sell everything. I especially I held my ETH because I was like, I still believe in the future of ETH. I don't really understand it. I didn't understand like smart contracts and all of that at the time, but it was sort of a case of like so many other smart people I know are really bullish on it. So I'm just going to hold. And I had maybe like 10, 15 ETH. So nothing again ludicrous, but I had that, and so late 2020, early 2021, prices started going up again, and obviously that's when people start getting a little more interested. But I still didn't really do much about it. I was still playing poker and focusing mostly on that. And then it was I think Feb or March that that same friend Jamie messaged me this time. He's like, "Do you know what an NFT is?" And I said, "No, what is it?" And he tells me, and my first reaction is that sounds like a scam, a Ponzi, et cetera, like most people's first impression. But not long after, we both did more research and ended up sort of understanding the power and the potential and everything interesting about NFTs, and that really sucked me in. And in that process as well, I was trying to learn as much about crypto, and I sort of discovered DeFi because I missed the whole DeFi summer, and that was another thing that was like, holy crap, this is just going to change the world. And it was around this time that I
Yeah.
said, you know what, I'm just going to make this full time pivot. I'd already been kind of getting over poker for a while, and I said, I'm just going to spend all my time in crypto because I wish I never left the previous time, and I don't want to make that mistake again. And so this is where I'm going to spend my time now. And yeah,
Awesome. Awesome. Sounds like Jamie was a good friend to you.
he's the best friend.
Um,
He is. Yeah, I owe him a lot.
Awesome, awesome. So from the beginning up until now, um, broad strokes, how has your strategy or philosophy changed around investing and trading? How has that evolved over time for you from a technical perspective and a mindset perspective? Like, what does your process look like?
Yeah, it's had a lot of changes over the years for a variety of reasons. If I had to pick some key differences, one I would say more from sort of a technical perspective in terms of finding trades, um, I was just hungrier back in 2021. It was new, it was exciting. My bankroll was much smaller. I had less going on. So I was spending 16 to 18 hours a day, 20 hours a day, sometimes just like glued to my screen. It was not the healthiest thing, but it was definitely gave me the greatest edge as a trader you could possibly have for that type of trading. That
Right.
just subsided over the years, and I lost a bit of that hunger. I'm still extraordinarily passionate for crypto investing and trading and the technology, but I've like changed my approach, so I'm spending less time. Um, Another big change is sort of that goes hand in hand with that is the idea of less is more. A lot of the time, the best trade is no trade. Just because something is maybe a slightly profitable opportunity, you also have to balance the time cost, the mental bandwidth you have to give it, so that if you're managing 5 positions, you have to keep up with the teams, the news, the price action, all that. If you're managing 50 positions, you're bound to miss things. You're going to miss claims, you're going to miss airdrops, you're going to miss announcements, you're going to miss time, the right time to sell, etc. So I've slowly but surely been working towards just fewer and fewer positions. It's a constant struggle for me because I just have a tendency to want to buy things and find things all the time. But that's one of the bigger philosophical changes, is just less is more. Um, yeah, I think let's stick to those two big ones.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So there's this theory from George Soros called theory of reflexivity. And it's based on this positive feedback loop between prices and expectations, and we see that a lot in crypto. Like higher prices lead to higher prices, and lower prices lead to lower prices. How important of a role do you think, in your opinion, does that have in this market specifically, or do you have any thoughts on that subject?
Yeah, it's a massive role. As I say, the best marketing for anything in crypto is number go up. It gets
Yep.
people excited, interested. It makes the
Right.
existing holders feel good. They want to share more about it. It's I would say it's the single most important part about trading and price action. It's not fundamentals. It's not team. It's not anything specifically fundamentally valuable. It is perception and what other people think of the token. I would even say that that extends um, beyond crypto. Like any investment is all about, a thing is only valuable if other people think it's valuable. So you try and decide, will other people think it's valuable and how valuable?
Okay, so we were talking about reflexivity. How do you account for that when you're, in the market, like in what you invest in and how you trade? Do you account for reflexivity consciously?
Yes, yeah, I think about it a lot. I think it's kind of like momentum. It's like as
Right.
something is getting a lot of attention, momentum price goes up and up and up. And then there's often a very quick rotation, especially lately, where some new shiny object pops up, a new meta, a new narrative, and then all of a sudden people aren't caring about animal memes or TikTok memes. They're caring about AI agents or this, that, or the other. And I think that once price starts going down, it's definitely harder for it to sort of recover and go back up. And so, yeah, it's definitely front of mind watching the price action and thinking about how that impacts future price action and just sentiment and momentum around everything.
Right. So the other thing I wanted to ask you was how much of your investing is based on fundamentals? Because last cycle was different when it came to that, and this cycle is a little bit different with the fragmentation and number of alts that we have. Has that changed for you at all, the way in which you invest and how you think about it?
Yes, definitely. I think last cycle I tried to apply fundamental analysis to all sorts of things. And I thought I was a genius because it was working, but in reality, everything was just going up. The market was just
Yeah.
crazy hot and bullish.
Right.
This time around, I still look at everything. Uh, I still take into consideration fundamentals for everything, but I discount it a lot. And it kind of depends if I'm looking at it from a short to medium term trade or a longer term investment. The more longer term the investment, the better the fundamentals need to be. Um, Most of my long term investments within crypto just tend to be Bitcoin, ETH, Sol, and a handful of NFT collections. Everything else I think of as mostly momentum and attention uh, base, and they will go up and down, many multiples and down
Yep.
99% in many instances. So I don't think you can rely on fundamentals for too much in this space.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. So I'd like to revisit your experience in poker, and there's this book by Ann Duke by the name of Thinking of Bets, which is a phenomenal book for anyone listening in. It has a quote which says, "All decisions are bets, and life is poker, not chess." So going back to your experience with poker, how do you think it shaped the way that you approach the market? Are there any lessons that you learned in that field that you brought into the market?
Yeah, it shaped the way I think about everything. I haven't read that book, but I've been recommended it many times because I talk about this topic a lot. So I should probably get it. Um, but basically, yeah, I think of everything in terms of probabilities and odds and outcome percentage chances. Um, Not always consciously, but it's how I make decisions. It's how I evaluate life, and I think it's a really good way of moving through life. And I'm grateful to poker for giving me the experience to learn it, but also put it into practice. And by put it into practice, I mean, when you're playing poker, there's certain percentage chances you're going to hit a flush, or that someone's going to hit one of two outs. And some things have a 30% chance, some things have less than 1% chance. And you play enough hands, and you sort of get a good feel for what it actually means for something to have a 2% chance. Because most people think 2%, that's never going to happen. Basically, treat it as zero. Same with 90%. 90% is basically guaranteed, treated as 100%. But there are differences, and especially when it comes to like trading and other things that have finances involved, it's important to recognize the differences. So I played millions and millions of pounds of poker, and so I've seen so many 2% chances hit and 95% chances not hit, and so on. So I think that just really helped train my mind for thinking in probabilities and understanding what they really mean. And when it comes to crypto and trading, it's just the same model applied, where you buy a token and think, there's a 98% chance it's going to go to zero, but a 2% chance it does 100x, and all of a sudden you do some math, and that turns out to be a good buy.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And speaking of probabilities, how do you go about developing conviction in your thesis and positioning? Like, how do you size up into a position? Is it over time, or you just do the research and look into things and just like, do you size in over time? How does that look like for you?
Yeah, I usually size in over time. So when I find something I feel is particularly interesting or exciting, I usually buy pretty quickly without doing too much research. It's sort of like gut instinct, first reactions, and
Yep.
then I'll do more research, and occasionally I end up selling because like I find some big red flag or something I missed. But if it's something that I really like, then I will look to add to that position, regardless of if it's going up or down in price. I think I'm a big believer in adding to your winners. So if you buy something and it goes up, that's just an additional data point that the thing you bought is potentially going to be seen as even more valuable by the market. But also, if you buy something and it goes down, if nothing fun like has changed in your thesis, then you're not getting it at a cheaper price. So if you find really good tokens that you believe in, then I think you should just size in, kind of regardless of the price in the short term, unless anything crazy is going on. Um,
Right.
the other thing is that you should always have like an exit strategy. So, it's one thing to size in at whatever these prices are, but have a plan and an idea of, if there's 2x's, 3x's, 5x's, when am I taking profit? How much profit am I taking? What are my sell triggers? What is an invalidation point where my thesis all of a sudden is no longer true, and I should bail on the investment? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of invalidations and exits, what did risk management look like for you initially, and how did that evolve for you over time?
Yeah. Initially, it was not great. I was just very all in on crypto and NFTs in 2021. And it obviously worked out well because the market was absolutely insane, but it could certainly have ended very badly. Um, Over time, I just sort of, I guess, developed a more healthy and balanced approach to both my crypto bankroll and assets outside of crypto. So I've now taken significant profits out of crypto so that I'm not the money that I make or lose in this space is not going to materially affect our day-to-day life. We're not playing with rent money or food money or mortgage money or anything significant. It's sort of like it's additional funds on top of that, and it's sort of like a separate bankroll now, which allows me to take a little bit more risk, but also just not be caught up in the day-to-day like emotions of ups and downs, where it's like it doesn't affect me as much as it used to in the past, where the majority of my overall net worth was within crypto. Now it's probably like it's still like probably 60%, 50 to 60% in crypto, but a healthy chunk out of it. And then the other way I think about it is never putting too much in any of the super duper risky tokens, and
Right.
trying to keep a healthy amount allocated to the quote unquote blue chips, Bitcoin, ETH, Sol, CryptoPunks as NFTs, a few other collections.
Yeah, it's funny because I was just thinking of that crypto bro meme where someone has like 8 figures in a MetaMask wallet and their bank account's like completely is like overdrafted.
That was me in 21. It wasn't quite that bad.
Yeah.
I'd
Yep.
taken some profits out, and we definitely had like a good safety cushion. But
Yeah.
99% of my net worth was in crypto, and 99% of that was in NFTs. So I was very all in. I made the mistake of thinking I was diversified because I had
Yeah.
art NFTs and gaming NFTs and PFP NFTs and Metaverse Land and all these other
Yep.
things. And then even without that, I had some other tokens in crypto. I think on some level, I knew that everything in crypto is correlated to Bitcoin. I had to have known. But on the other hand, I fooled myself into thinking, you know what? It's not all going to go down that much
Yeah.
forever. Yeah, expensive lessons learned.
Yeah. Speaking of expensive lessons, I think I read something along the lines of you made 8 figures and round tripped a decent chunk of it. So my next question is, how did you deal with that loss, and how did you go about like coming back from that and learning the lessons? Because I think in this space I've seen that quite a bit. Like I get DMs every now and again, people talking about running up not a lot of money to 6, 7, 8 figures and round tripping a decent chunk of it. So how did you come back from that? And what was, because people repeat the same mistakes I've seen in this market. How did you recover from that?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what I was talking about before, like the 8 figures in Metaverse and not much in the bank. That was me in 21. I It was definitely tough. Like 2022 and 2023 had some difficult parts to get through. I think anyone that sort of round trips that amount of money or like loses back to the market that amount of money is gonna feel something, especially if it's the first time. Um,
Right.
Actually, probably any time. It doesn't really get that much easier. But I never took it too badly. I think because even at my worst, having round tripped, like I've been very fortunate in crypto. So when I got in March, April 2021, I remember thinking, I actually tweeted this at the time, and this is going to prove me as a liar. But I said, if I make 7 figures this year in crypto, I'm going to get a tattoo of, there was some NFT collection back then. And it was like my wildest pipe dream to make that amount of money. Like I would have been ecstatic making 200,000 in crypto that year. And so to get to the point where I was, it was all a fever dream. And even after round tripping 8 figures, I was still up, over $1 million, several millions of dollars. And so it's very easy to be grateful for that and to, set aside, yeah, okay, I could have had more. It sucks, but look what I have. This is incredible. I'm so lucky. I'm so fortunate. I'm so much more better off than I was a year ago, 2 years ago, than I could have ever imagined. So just all of those thoughts really helped ground me. And yeah, it really there was some tough moments, but it was never catastrophic or super duper tough. And because I didn't round trip all of it. And then there was also just the knowledge and belief that a lot of this is going to come back. And, a lot of those things that were down tremendously bad have since come back. I've learned a lot. I can use the lessons I've learned, and
Right.
I'm building in the space. And that focus, actually, a lot of it was, 2022 and 3 was, I was working like 18-hour days on Zen Academy, like just nonstop. So
Hmm.
I didn't even have the time to be to dwell or anything like that. And then I also knew that, regardless, I've built now a personal brand, and I have other opportunities in the space to, um, yeah. So it's yeah. Anyway, it was tough, but not that tough ultimately for me.
Awesome, awesome. So yeah, it sounds like you just looked at it through the lens of being grateful for what you have and understanding that there's more opportunities in the space, and diversifying into other fields in terms of being a builder, and continuing to just show up and put in the work.
Yeah, and also just like the Stoic philosophy of, I can't change the past. What is in
Right.
what's in my control and what's not in my control, and like I literally can't go back and change it. And so that actually helped. That specific line of thinking helped sometimes, because I was like, all right, I can't change the past, but I can make better decisions going forward. So let's look at what my portfolio is like now and set aside what it was once worth. Are some of these tokens still overvalued? Should I sell being down 80% or being down 90% to prevent going down 99%? And I
Right.
did a bunch of things I sold that were down
Yeah.
80 to 95%, that have since dropped another 80 to 95%. So that line of thinking certainly helped.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of people are in that same position right now where they're down like 80% on their bags and they're waiting for some sort of revival to sell. What advice would you give some of these people? Because there's a lot of people that have reached out to me as well. Hey, like I have all these meme coins, I'm down 80%. What should I do? And obviously, we're not offering any financial advice here. This is for educational purposes only. But I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's an incredibly difficult thing to actually decide what to do, because, you know, uh, in April, like May, June, July 2021, the market crashed tremendously, and then it bounced back, and hit new all-time highs. So you could have sold at a massive loss and then had all those things really bounce back within months. Similar to with NFTs, we had many mini bull and bear cycles, um, over the years. I think that
Maybe we
without
could
like
rephrase the
yeah.
question. Say you were in that position right now, and you're talking to yourself. You're in the position where you're down 80%. What would you do?
Yeah, it is difficult because everyone is different. So like I probably have a higher risk tolerance and a
Right.
higher propensity to hold things that are down bad than others.
Yep.
I think if like just going back to a more general perspective, because I also get the question a lot where people reach out and say, "Hey, I'm down this much in meme coins. What should I do?"
Right.
I
Yeah.
think generally people should treat that as a wake up call, obviously, a sign that they were overexposed. And I advise sort of making a plan to move forward. Like, again, you can't change the past, but you can make a plan moving forward. And that can include things like writing down what you won't do next time around. So like, set profit targets to take profits, say that you'll never have this higher percentage of your crypto portfolio in meme coins and realize that you should have less. And then you can actually take action based on that plan. So if you say, you know what, I never want to have more than 10% of my crypto portfolio in meme coins. And then if you're down 80%, but you still have half or more of your crypto portfolio in meme coins, then you should sell. Like you should sell a bunch of that, put it into Bitcoin or ETH or Sol or something else. And yes, it sucks to take a big loss, but it can always go down more. And you're better off having a plan and sticking to it than just hoping and praying and wishing and dreaming for some utopian scenario which may or may not happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice. So we talked about some struggles, but what do you think are your strengths when it comes to the market? What do you think you're good at with your approach?
I think one is the psychological element of it, and again, this comes from poker. Just not being just not getting too upset if I lose money or if I miss out on a trade, or I still feel like pangs of FOMO and regret. I think everyone does, but I'm
Right.
very quickly able to move on from it. It's like something really
Hmm.
bad happens. I sold a meme coin that then does a 500x or whatever, or I round trip a massive thing. Um, yes, it sucks, it hurts, it stings, but I can within like a few minutes or maybe a few hours if it's particularly bad, just sort of like go for a walk, reset my head, refresh, and just move on to the next one. And I think that that's something that not a lot of people can do, because not a lot of people have the experience of like making and losing money as much as me
Right.
or as poker players tend to have, and the variance and the roller coaster of it all. So that, I think that's definitely given me a pretty strong advantage in general. And the other thing I would say is, I think I have a better than average ability to quickly process large amounts of information. And again, this probably
Mhm.
comes from poker, because I was playing 12 tables at a time, 16 tables at a time, a lot of the time. And so just constantly processing information. And that's kind of like what being like finding good opportunities in crypto is about. It's constantly scanning crypto Twitter. It's being across a few Discord servers, a bunch of Telegram chats, news sites, and just sort of passing together, what does this mean? Is all this information telling me that NFTs are about to have a mini run? Is all this information telling me that meme coins are going to have a run? So, like, I think right now NFTs are about to have a run, and I wrote as much in my newsletter yesterday because of a bunch of things going on and all this information. Um, Another example is back when Murad made his infamous meme coin video at Token 2049, and there was a massive meme coin rally after that. Once I saw the video and started seeing like it started to get some virality and people were talking about it,
Mhm.
and I was like, you know what, this is going to take off. This is a big deal, and I was able to size into a bunch of the Murad list coins relatively early on. Like most of them had done like a 2-3x already, but I just sort of looked at where the market caps were and just sentiment, and made my bets then. So, and similar thing with base. I sense this movement going over to base from Solana, and AI agents taking off, and that worked out well. So yeah, just generally being able to spot trends and act on them is one of my strengths.
Awesome. So there's this conversation around the information stream, and there's a talk about, hey, once things start coming up on Twitter, you're already towards the end of that information stream. What are your thoughts on that? Is there still good information that's publicly available that people could take advantage of? Or
Oh yeah,
yeah, I'd like to
absolutely.
get your thoughts on that.
I get why people say that, and there's definitely truth to it, but it's also kind of nonsense to me. Twitter has all ends of the information spectrum. So you'll have uh, things that are very late, like things everyone knows about, and someone's tweeting, and it's the top, and there's no other buyers, and you see it. But then there's also things that someone who has uh, 2,000 followers or 800 followers tweets out a thesis, and it's really smart, makes sense, intelligent, and not many people have seen it, and you haven't heard anyone else talking about it in any other places, and you go, you know what, this makes a lot of sense, this is alpha, and you act on it, and from there, perhaps if it is a good enough idea and thesis, it'll spread, and you've just found something really early, but it's still on Twitter. And the other element of it all is it's also really good at, again, just like sentiment checking the space, or where directionally attention is and capital is likely to flow. And so that is not just one person, but it's like getting the aggregate of a whole bunch of people on Twitter, and just sensing, is something else about to take off. And the last thing I'll say on this is, I've never made my money from being super duper early. I've never
Hmm.
been particularly good at on-chain analysis, at picking winners months in advance. What my, I think, skill is finding things that are late early. So like they've
Hmm.
taken off a bit. They've probably done a few multiples from the low, but to me that gives me some additional conviction that they're moving in the right direction. And I'm happy to size into things if I don't have to be the earliest, as long as I think that there's still a significant amount of runway ahead. More people will find this interesting. It'll explode into a much bigger narrative. The token is really really good. The team is really really good. Like maybe there's something fundamental, maybe not. Maybe it's narrative based. But just realizing that, yeah, you don't have to be super early. You just have to be uh, early enough.
Yeah, no, that makes absolute sense. And what I wanted to ask you was, how does one go about developing this ability of filtering information? Do you think it's just a factor of time in front of the screen, and that is how you develop intuition? And for someone listening in, how can they develop that ability or cut some corners to get there a little bit quicker. What would your advice be on that?
Yeah, a lot of it is experience doing this a lot. I think curating your information flow is really, really interesting, important, really, really important. There's like an infinite amount of content out there, and most of it is junk, and the signal to noise ratio is terrible. Um,
Yep.
so you can save time and improve your information flow by just sort of filtering for people who generally post sensible good things and muting people who are just shit posting or posting nonsense, or create Twitter lists and separate your information. So like you can have the shit posting list or the general list, and we just want to have fun. But if you're looking for alpha or opportunities or investing thoughts and things like that, then go follow the people who are generally better at sharing things like that. So that helps. But in terms of being able to like quickly act on it and pass it, I think, yeah, again, experience is there's no substitute for that. But also having like I've always said the best alpha community you can be in is like a group chat with like 5 friends. And so have a small group
Yeah.
chat with a few friends, either from IRL, or if your IRL friends aren't crypto, find some crypto friends. It's genuinely easy to make crypto friends if you just put yourself out there and ask people. Set up a chat, and then whenever something comes across your radar or any of their radars, you're like, hey, I just saw this tweet. What do you guys think? And then you're like debating back and forth amongst one another. You get to see how other people think of things. You get to form your own opinions. You do this time and time and time again. Hey, this protocol is just launching. Hey, should we be farming abstract? Hey, should we bridge to Sonic? Hey, should we AI agents about to take off again? Should we buy this meme coin? And just do this all the time for a long enough time, and you will just get better and better. It's like any other skill. The more you do it, especially if you're consciously trying to be good at it and improve at it, you will see remarkable results, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we've basically touched on all these themes, but I wanted to distill it into one answer. There's this book by Tom Hugert. It's called Best Loser Wins. And it talks about how important it is to be able to accept losses and not have your ego tied to the market. What characteristics or traits do you think are key for someone to be successful in the market, in your opinion? If you were to boil it down to 3 or 4 things.
Yeah. Patience, discipline, systems are probably the main ones to me. I think that too many people are caught up on finding the next gem, finding alpha, finding the best tokens. But it doesn't actually matter uh, what you buy or what price you buy it at. What matters is whether you exit it at a good time. Like you could buy the best token at the best possible price, um, but if you don't sell, take any profits when it's at the top or when it's anywhere profitable, you end up round tripping the whole bag. Then you're going to do much worse than someone who buys at a price 10 times yours and then sells for a 2x. And so I think understanding um, that mentality, and that again requires discipline and systems, is probably the biggest indicator to me of people who are going to be successful and not. And so systems are things like just set rules for yourself. Anytime a token I have does a 2x, I'm going to take half of it out, is a pretty common one, which sort of protects your downside. Or anytime it hits a new all-time high, I'm going to trim 10% or 15% off my position. Another system is anytime I take profits from a coin, send 10 or 20% to a cold wallet or to my bank account and just lock that up as profits, and don't put that back into the market. Journaling and logging your trades, I think, are both incredibly helpful things to do. You're not going to get better as a trader if you're not reflecting on your trades. And too many people, myself included, a lot of the time, I don't always take my own advice, but too often we get caught up in hype and mania and the speed of it all, and just like buying this, that, and the other. And then I tell myself, yeah, at the end of this session or the day, I'll go back and log my trades. And again, I don't always do it, but I never regret doing it. And I think that the fastest way to learn is to do things like that. So yeah, I mean, having patience, having discipline, using systems, and focusing on that side of it is going to give anyone a much bigger edge than being a genius or finding the earliest alpha. There's a quote that I love, one of my favorite quotes. It's a chess quote. I the guy it's by Siegbert Tarash or something. I'm probably butchering the name, but anyway, he says it is not enough to be good at chess. You must also play well. And that stuck
Mm,
through me. It applies to poker. It applies to everything. You could be the best poker
yeah.
player in the world, but if you tilt, if you go, you could be the best tennis player in the world, but if your one thing goes wrong and you throw your racket across, you're just never going to
Yeah.
have better results, good results compared to someone who's slightly or even significantly worse technically, but has all their soft skills and mental game on point.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that detailed answer. And it's interesting because I wanted to touch on these philosophical and psychological themes that we basically encapsulated over the course of this conversation. But some of the themes I wanted to touch on was stoicism, the concept of the two arrows in Buddhism, where the first arrow can't be controlled, but the second arrow is one that's self-inflicted due to your reaction based on emotion. And then there's a quote in this book called Trading in the Zone, which is randomness is unstructured freedom without responsibility. And the third theme is the statement by John Maynard Keynes, which is successful investing is anticipating the anticipation of others. And we've basically covered all of those themes. So yeah, this has been a great conversation so far, and I'm sure it's insightful for anyone that's been listening in.
Yeah, I've
So
enjoyed it as
let's
well.
segue. Awesome. So
Sorry,
let's
go ahead.
segue to discussion on the market and narratives. So first, I'd like to get your general thoughts on the past 2 years and how similar or different you think the market has been compared to the past, and implications of this in the future. Is this something that you have some framework on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last 2 years have been interesting and I would say different. People often say, so many people talk about the 4-year cycle in crypto. I've spoken about it myself, but I think for the last 18 months, I've been thinking and occasionally saying that I think it's going to break down, and it has to eventually, inevitably break down. It just won't be allowed to go on 4-year cycles, same way forever and ever and ever. And I think people place way too much reliance on it. When in reality, you think about, what is the sample size? It's like 2, maybe 3, 4-year cycles, and everyone has been a significantly different market and landscape. So yeah, things are going to be different. We've already seen that this time around. Bitcoin hit a new all-time high pre-halvening, but just the regulatory shift and the change in landscape is enormous. So yeah, basically, I don't pretend to have any realistic idea of what's going to happen in the short or medium term for crypto, for stock markets, for macro, for anything really. I do believe long term, uh, because of capitalism and my belief in crypto, that it'll be up and to the right. Bitcoin will go up and to the right. Stock market will go up and to the right. Good things will happen. Uh, Within that, I think it's best to try and trade like smaller narratives. And again, it's impossible to know, but you can have like a 60% confidence rate. Yeah, it's going to go this way or that way. And yeah, that's kind of how I think about markets. I think where we are right now. Actually, I read about this 2 weeks ago in my newsletter. The topic was, is the crypto bull market over? Because its sentiment
Hmm.
was really low. A lot of people were asking this,
Yep.
and the way I come to sort of answering these types of questions is, first of all, realizing that I myself am not an expert in any specific domain area, like domain knowledge that related to this. And by that I mean I'm not a macroeconomics expert. I'm not an expert in technical analysis. I'm not an expert on cycle theory. I'm not an expert in this, that, or the other. But what I, again, am good at is passing the information of other people who I consider to be experts, or at least have some idea what they're talking about. And so I try and take into
Right.
account all this information coming from all these other sources, and weigh like the things that to me seem, and to them seem to indicate that the bull market is likely to continue, that will hit new all-time highs this year, versus the negatives. And with Bitcoin, there's a lot of bullish catalysts. The regulatory landscape is much better. The SEC has dropped cases. There's a strategic reserve. Countries and states are talking about buying Bitcoin, et cetera, et cetera. But then there are negatives in terms of, macro is a bit uncertain. Trump's tariff nonsense. Who knows what's going to happen? A lot of the catalysts and news events are behind us. The ETFs, the election, all of Trump's election promises for crypto have been fulfilled. and so on and so forth. And balancing all of that, you kind of have to like just have a gut reaction and come up with an answer. And mine was, I think there's
Right.
still a 75 to 80% chance that the bull market continues this year. So that's kind of how I think about things and where I landed. I have no real idea if I'm accurate or not, but you have to pick something, I think.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. And then there's, I think Bitcoin has set itself apart as an asset in this market. And there's this conversation on, hey, this is the last cycle in crypto where you can make it big. And I think it relates to more so the some of the degeneracy in, as we call it, the trenches. Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think that continues in this space, or do you think that changes? Is that something that you've thought about?
Yeah, once again, it's very similar to poker. So in the early years of poker, it was pretty damn easy to make money. You didn't have to be particularly intelligent. You could read a book and follow a hand chart and still make money.
Right.
As time went on, it got more difficult. The game got more solved, sophisticated. Many more players that knew what they were doing entered the game. The existing players got better, and it just got tougher and tougher and tougher. Similar thing is happening with crypto, I think, where in the early years it was relatively easy. Not easy because there's so many, landmines to sidestep and things like that, but you could have gotten the Ethereum ICO, for instance. That is an opportunity that is not really available to people these days. You could have minted or claimed CryptoPunks for free, and so on and so forth. You could have bought things really early in early 2021. Uh, the amount of opportunities and the size of them and the edge an individual can have today, I think, is all lower and will continue to get lower because of increased competition, uh, more sophistication with bots, more efficient markets, etc. I I don't think this is the last cycle to make it. I do think that someone who is working hard and training and being like working at being a trader or investor or whatever it is, there is still a long future of being able to make money in crypto one way or another. But yeah, it's certainly getting harder, and I think fewer and fewer people will make it. And that's why my advice to basically everyone is just buy Bitcoin, just DCA into
Hmm.
Bitcoin. And then if you have a
Yeah.
little more time, you can maybe set up a bit of a strategy around ETH and Sol, and try and scale out when the market is super frothy and scale back in. But
Yeah.
basically, it's just you'll buy and hold Bitcoin, you'll do better than 99% of people.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. So speaking of investing in Bitcoin and the majors, setting aside a different strategy for some of the other narratives, are there? I think you mentioned NFTs, but are there any narratives that you're keeping your eye on currently?
Yeah, I think NFTs are about to take off again, which I'm particularly excited about. We'll see if that actually works out, but there's just a buzz around them at the moment. There's been a few collections that have taken off and gotten attention. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, so I think and hope that. I think AI, to me, the most interesting thing in crypto right now. Well, two things. One is stable coins, which is not sexy and not always easy for people to make a profit on and capitalize on. But the other is AI. I think that there's no chance that AI doesn't continue to be a significant narrative in crypto because it is the biggest technology in the world by far. And I think crypto is second or very much up there. And so the intersection of the two, there will be plenty of opportunities, plenty of interesting things and narratives. Obviously, we had the AI agent meta that massive bubble blew up, crashed. I think it'll come back eventually. And I think other areas of AI will really take off. Like AI DeFi is a newish one that is starting to gain more attention and prominence. And then there will be many more as well. So those are probably the two areas I'm most focused on. There will be other narratives and metas. Gaming will have its time,
Right.
etc. But for now, it's these. Oh, last thing I'll say on this is that it does seem that there's a bit more of a flight to quality right now. I think so
Hmm.
many people got so burned on meme coins, so burned
Yeah.
out on meme coins as well, that there's a lot of people that now are like, you know what, I want to invest in a protocol that's generating revenue, or a team that's building a layer two, something of substance, or a game, or whatever, something a little more than meme coins. That I don't think meme coins will die by any means either.
Got it. And then it's okay if you don't have any thoughts on this, but I've been asking everyone that's been coming on if they have any thoughts on perp dexes. Have you used one, and what do you think is the future in that space, and what might be holding them back?
Yeah, I like them. I think Hyperliquid is great. I used DYDX back in the day. I think they just turned on a fee switch as well. Um, I think it's fantastic. I think we need more competition away from centralized exchanges. Uh, they have made insane profits. I mean, for a long time, and a lot of their practices have been not great. They've done a lot of good for the world. They've been a necessary evil, I think, for helping
Yeah.
onboard, and we still very much need them. And not all centralized exchanges are created equal. Some are way better than others. But things of like listing tokens, there's so many horror stories of like the
Yeah.
mercenary tactics that exchanges will do. And then you think of like the fees that they charge, which are fine, they need to charge fees. But like if you can have a decentralized model where the fees are lower or the fees get returned to the users, it's just it's just like DeFi. DeFi is better than banks. Um, Decentralized exchanges, perp dexes are better than centralized exchanges in many ways. So yeah, I'm bullish on them. I'm hopeful that they will continue to gain adoption and prominence, especially as the ease of using them improves. So like, I mean,
Hmm.
I'm a big believer that at some point in the future, whether it's a year, 2, 5 years, 10 years from now, people just have an app on their phone and they'll go in and they'll buy a
Yeah.
coin, trade a coin, stake a coin, long a coin.
Right.
And in the background, they don't know what blockchain it's on, they don't know what DEX they're
Yeah.
using, they don't know this, that, or the other. It's just an app. And so I think that we'll eventually get there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so let's pivot. I asked Twitter for some questions, and I'm gonna scroll through and see if we've got anything that I can ask. Okay, Gal XBT asks, "How have you survived great losses?" We pretty much covered that one. How did you make your first six figures in crypto?
Hmm. Um, that was trying to think back to. I mean, technically, I made six figures on paper in 2017, but I might have even taken out around six, but I definitely round trip most of it. 2021, it was definitely through NFTs. Um, it would have been. I would say probably art blocks is the right answer because I was very early to art or relatively early to art blocks and very bullish and all in on it. I still am bullish. Bought a ton of things and then there was just a moment where they just all exploded and went crazy and that's probably where it came from. Yeah.
All right. 2XP XBT asks, if you could go back in time, which is your biggest hurdle in your career that you would have discovered and dealt with earlier?
Um, I mean, probably just taking profits as a general thing, and part of that is like not having systems, not understanding what actual diversification was. Yeah, just taking profits would be the biggest one.
Okay. And then there's one last question from Carol Free. I'd love to hear your thoughts on balancing mindfulness with the fast-paced world of crypto.
With great difficulty, I think it's not one of those easy things to do. And once again, this is why I recommend most people just buy in and DCA into Bitcoin because not only will you outperform 99% of people, but you'll save a hell of a lot of time by not feeling like you need to keep up with all the latest trends and this, that, or the other. Now, if you want to keep up with the trends because you're interested in the technology, you're passionate about the space, then that's fantastic. And you can spend however much time you want on that. But I think if you're approaching it from that angle, you probably won't feel stressed and you will be able to have a mindful, more balanced life. That said, most people, I presume, are wanting to trade and make money in crypto and also keep some sort of balance on the side. It is difficult. I think you just have to. Um, I mean, I want to say set habits and routines, but I struggle massively with keeping any of those myself. I think
Mhm.
just sort of find what works for you. Like everyone is different. just the fact that you're asking this question probably puts you ahead of most people. Being mindful of being mindful is a thing. And whether it's taking breaks, taking walks, practicing gratitude, uh, journaling really helps. All of these things are like tools that one can use, but you got to find the right tools for your own life and situation. And some people thrive on like habits and systems. Others are more chaotic, and different things will work.
Okay, awesome. And I'll throw one question in for myself, and that's, for anyone listening in, what advice would you give to someone who has a small portfolio, and this is relative, and they're saying, Zeneca, listen, I get it, Bitcoin, I can DCA in, but
Hmm.
I'm trying to be in the market and I'm trying to grow my stack. What do I do?
Yeah, I mean, like, while I do think Bitcoin is DCAing is best for most people, I will certainly concede that there's a reasonable chunk of people where it's not the best strategy, and generally it's people who are like younger. You're 19 years old. You have no responsibilities, commitments. You have
Right.
plenty of time on your hand, um, and can just like devote all your time to this space. And for that, I would say do exactly that. Like go all in, spend all your time learning about the space, finding opportunities, trying things, um, build your network. That's probably the most powerful thing, and that means just like again making that group chat with 5 people, 6 people, 4 people, 10 people that you're all helping each other. You're sharing information, alpha. You're debating opportunities with one another, and you'll learn that way. Um, and airdrop farm, like depending on how small your bankroll is. If one of the best ways for people with a very small bankroll to make money in crypto is farm airdrops. Like it, it's getting more and more diluted for sure, but there's also more and more opportunities and better ones. So there's definitely plenty of money to be made by putting in some time, finding good airdrops. Some of them only require $10 to sort of be considered an active user. Some of them require nothing. You just use the test net, or like Kaito was just social. Just having a Twitter account, you connect your Twitter account to their website, and you got like a airdrop of like 60 Kaito tokens, which was like $100. There's all sorts of crazy opportunities in crypto for someone starting with literally $0, just an internet connection, and then there's all the way up. So I think that the lower your bankroll, the more heavily you should focus on airdrop farming. And then if you're trying to get more into trading and flipping and things like that, find a group, find your information flows, and then create systems and stick to them. So like taking profits at certain points and managing your risk and bankroll is obviously another big one.
Yeah, thanks for that detailed answer. So it looks like we didn't get many questions. I've started doing this new thing where I have this rapid fire round, basically
Hmm.
testing like system one thinking. And basically I throw out a word and you just say whatever comes to your mind. If you're down to do it, we can go
Yeah,
ahead
let's
and
do it.
do some of that. All right, awesome. Solana,
Memes,
ETH,
the best.
Bitcoin,
The actual best.
NFTs,
Love.
Trump in crypto,
Wildcard.
crypto Twitter,
Mental asylum.
pump fun,
Solana memes.
altcoins.
Dangerous.
And the question, what part of the cycle are we in?
Late-ish.
Okay, awesome. That about wraps that up. Usually I like to ask about routine. So what does a typical day look like for you right now? I know you mentioned, hey, like you're not really the best at maintaining a routine, but what does a general day look like for you right now?
Yeah, I'm just god awful at it. I want to be the type of person who can do it, but I'm pretty. I mean, I got diagnosed with ADHD this week, so I've long thought I have it. I believe I have it, and I'm going
I
to
see.
start some meds next week. So we'll see if that helps. It
Okay.
feels like everyone has ADHD these days. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, my routine is, I'll sleep anywhere from like 10 p.m. to like 3 a.m. Wake up usually 7, 8 hours after that. I almost always get a good night's sleep. Um, spend, uh, let's see. I guess like lately it's been heavily focused on writing. And so both my newsletter,
Hmm.
but I'm writing a book as well. And so
Okay.
I'll throughout the day spend, if we talk about last week or two, like 2, 3, even up to 4 hours writing, writing slash editing. And it makes up a decent chunk of my day. Another decent chunk is literally just scrolling crypto Twitter and just staying on top of the space. Doesn't always feel like the best use of time, but it does make me feel connected. Um, Occasionally, selling a coin or buying a coin or making a change in my positions. Although I've lately been sitting on my hands a lot.
Hmm.
Um, Play with the dog. Take her to the dog park if the weather's good. Try and take her for 2, 3 walks a day. Um, Play some video games. I love playing video games and probably should play less of them, but anyway, have fun. Yeah, go out for a coffee, go out for a meal, see a friend, spend time with my wife. Yeah, those are all like things I'll do on a typical day, and
Okay.
procrastinate
Okay.
replying to my emails and DMs because I'm god awful.
Oh yeah, I'm the same. I'm pretty bad at that. You mentioned you're writing a book. I'm just interested. Like, is this a book on the market, or like what type of book are you writing?
Yeah. It's so the working title is Crypto Survival Guide, or a
Okay.
previous title was Be a Better Trader. I don't know what I'm going to settle on, but it's basically a collection of thoughts, ideas, tools that I find useful, and I've learned either from the last many years in crypto or the previous 15 years in poker that I think will be helpful to others to learn about, think about, that would ideally make people a better trader or investor. Um, yeah, so it includes everything from where to find alpha, how to curate your information flow, creating systems, identifying if you're better off being a trader or investor. Um, some things like what was I thinking? Things like inversion theory, things
Mm-hmm.
like setting stop losses, things like invalidation, just like a bunch of concepts, expected value, and then
Mm-hmm.
the psychological element of it, like the mental game. So yeah, just a whole
Awesome.
bunch of
Awesome.
thoughts related to this type of thing.
What's the timeline on that for anyone listening in that's interested, in terms of when it's going to be published or when
It's
you're
a
going to put
million
it
dollar
out?
question. I've been saying 2 to 3 months for about six
Yeah.
months. But last sort of previous 3 months, I basically didn't touch it at all until like a week and a half ago. And I've got like a lot of uh, momentum behind me now. So it's my
Yeah.
current pace. I might have like the first draft fully done within a week. And so maybe, hopefully, still 2 months from now, we can actually have it out because I'm going to self publish. So once it's ready, it'll just be ready.
All right. Awesome. I'll be looking forward to that as well. Do you have any other plans moving forward? Something that you're looking to do, or outside of the market or in the market
Mm,
for that matter?
no, I don't think so. I was kind of floating around aimlessly for the last year and a half, where I was doing some trading and not really like some random shit posting on Twitter, and very occasionally I'd write a newsletter and hanging out in the Zen Academy Discord, but I didn't really have a focus. I've found that focus in the last couple of months, which is again back on writing, newsletter and book, and I think that that is kind of where I want to keep things for the foreseeable future. So keep writing my newsletter, get this book done, if it goes well, write another book. I love writing. I enjoy it, and
Yeah.
if I have things that I think are valuable to write about, or I can research them, I'd love to keep doing that. And I very much love to stay in crypto. There's no other space that I think is as exciting, aside from AI. But I think you can be in both crypto
Yeah.
and AI, which I am.
Sounds good, man. That sounds great. Before we wrap it up, any parting advice for people listening in, life, trading, otherwise, anything?
Hmm. Um, I would say patience is one of the most important things, both life and trading, but especially in trading, to try and practice patience. And just, I mean, have fun. Like, life's too short, and I think just try and enjoy life is kind of the mentality I've been going with lately. Like, yeah, bad stuff's going to happen all the time. There's this quote, I can't remember where it's from, but it's basically life is you get born, then you have a problem happen, and then you solve it, and then another problem happens, and then you solve it, and then you die. It's just solving problems, life throwing things
Yeah.
at you, and then eventually it's over. Or along the same lines, I think this is a Buddhist quote, and it goes along the lines of if you have if you have if you have 10 problems and you solve 3 of them, you'll still have 10 problems because you'll find 3 new things to
Yeah.
that are bothering you in life. No matter what happens in life, no matter how much money you get, how much success you get in one field or the other, we will find the thing to be unhappy about if we choose to focus on it. So just try and find the joy and happiness and lightheartedness of life. I think easier said
Yeah.
than done.
That's beautiful. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Hmm.
Are there any recommendations for accounts that you would nominate? I'm always looking for guests to bring on.
Let's see. Legendary Gains. Have you had him on?
I have not. No.
He's really, really
Okay.
great. Would recommend him. It's just Legendary Gains. I can send you it afterwards. GAINZ
Yeah.
underscore.
Okay.
Trader Main, I really like. Trader
Oh yeah, yeah. I just had him on
MAYNE.
recently, actually.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Ignis
I just
DeFi.
had him on right last week.
Oh, that's
Ignis
amazing.
DeFi. Okay.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that. Yeah, Ignis DeFi is really great. Sammy S4MMY. All things AI.
Okay.
He's on top of it. He's fantastic. I could go on, but I don't know how many.
All right.
more
Yeah,
you
that
want.
works. I'll try to bring those
Yeah.
people on. Is
Awesome.
there anything that you'd like to plug?
I'll say just my newsletter right now, which is Zeneca.xyz. Yeah, I'm writing a lot more there. So if you like my thoughts or writing, then go check it out. And yeah, I'll definitely be announcing my book via newsletter as well. If not if when it's done.
Awesome, man. Sounds good. Really looking forward to it. Zeneca, once again, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation. And in closing, I'd like to read a quote from Seneca, which is fitting for this conversation. Every night before going to sleep, we must ask ourselves, what weakness did I overcome today and what virtue did I acquire? So on that note, to everyone listening in, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Stay tuned for more episodes. Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you.